This summer, I learned to listen to rain on the slate roof of the old house. I was 8, and the world felt like a soft, patient breath pressed against a window that wouldn't rise. I could hear the rain's small conversations, drips like careful syllables, a constant murmur that refused to rush. The house wore its weather like a grandmother's shawl, heavy and domesticated. Every room a memory kept in velvet. Our yard smelled of sunlit dust and lilac, and the lilac bushes, in their heavy dress, would shed a few petals at the back door, as if to remind us that beauty had a fragile spine. The old house knew how to keep quiet. It listened first, then spoke, and if you listened long enough, you could hear the house's own memories arrange themselves into a soft, almost domestic order. This is how summers passed for us, my sister and me, under the watchful lilt of Mrs. Alderbury's voice next door, and the house's sighing. Timbred rhythm that signalled meals, prayers, and bed. The ritual began as something almost ridiculous and entirely necessary to a child's courage. On the 3rd hot day of July, when the air hung like wet linen and the windows breathed out their own heat, we would set a glass tumbler on the sill of the kitchen window, facing the waning sun. We would press 3 coins into the bottom of the chair, nickels that had known a great deal of the world for their size, and we would whisper into the glass the name of the person we missed most, the person whom the house might remember for us if we asked hard enough. We called it keeping the memory warm, so that memory wouldn't vanish in the rain. The person I missed most then was Hazel, a girl who lived 2 crumbling blocks away and who wore her hair in a long braid that swung like a pendulum when she laughed. Hazel had a way of seeing the house's corners as if they were rooms inside rooms, a map of little doors that opened only when she believed in them. She vanished one summer, as abruptly as a bell sounds when it tolls for the last time. No storm, no scream, only the sense that the air had suddenly become too quiet. After that, the ritual shifted from a child's bravado to a quiet pact between 2 children, and a house that listened. We whispered Hazel's name with a kind of reverent candour, and the coins settled into their little hollow, like stars dropped into a jar of dusk. Hazel's absence folded itself into the walls of the house in a way that felt almost intimate, as if the plaster had learned her handwriting, and the floorboards kept her footsteps in their grain. We did not tell anyone about the ritual, not even our mother, who thought us harmlessly imaginative, and perhaps a touch too fond of the old place's nervous, creaking breath. She would laugh and pull the door, so it would shut with a shy, conspiratorial click, as if the house itself might be listening and wanted to keep us honest. Years compressed themselves into a single summer after Hazel disappeared, into the summer when I learned to be proud of knowing the house's moods. I learned, for instance, that the attic it smelled of old milk and paper, and something citrus that never belonged to any kitchen in our memory. It was there, in a trunk bound with cracked leather, that I found a photo album that did not belong to us, though the faces inside were mine and Hazel's. With the house peering over our shoulders, as if it too would like to claim these moments, the pages were pressed hard with time, their edges curling like tired petals, and among them lay a thin, yellowed envelope with no stamp and not even a name on it, save for a single line in someone else's handwriting. Hazel. The memory of curiosity is a dangerous flame for a child, and I was cunning enough to pretend not to notice the envelope. To pretend the trunk's size were only the usual attic breeze at dusk. But the house has a way of nudging your attention toward the thing you pretend not to see. On the night I turned 10, the rain began with a patient drizzle, the kind that seems to measure out the minutes of a life. The attic door opened of its own accord, not violently, but with that slow, conscientious gentleness that belongs to places that have grown tired of pretending to be inert. The trunk waited, and in it waited not just Hazel, but the envelope. The envelope I found implied a memory more stubborn than any memory a boy should harbour. I was not supposed to be curious, not then. Curiosity was a thing you earned after you learned that desire could burn through you without leaving a scar. Curiosity was something you carried like a blanket when the world got cold. But the envelope was a thread I couldn't resist tugging. Inside lay a single letter, addressed to a version of me that hadn't yet learned to spell the word remember. It spoke of a pact, of a house's long memory, of a door that would only open when a heart believed that the past could return if you asked it softly enough. It was signed with Hazel's name, but the ink had run in places, as if it had cried out while drying. I tucked the letter beneath my shirt, as if it could shield me from the consequence of what I had learned. The house remembered, always. From that summer forward, Hazel and I performed the ritual with a gravity that startled our mother's laughter into silence. We poured a little water from the jug into the glass, and our whispered names, Hazel and then mine, drifted out into the room like a careful breath. We did not pretend to summon Hazel back, so much as to remind the house that someone had... When Hazel vanished, and then other things began to vanish too, the house did not forget. The light in the kitchen guttered and then steadied, the way a tired lamp steadies when you whisper to it. The stairs remembered the cadence of footsteps, even when no one walked them. And as I grew, the memory of Hazel grew too, into a more complicated shape, one that did not suit the simple memory of a girl who laughed in the sun. In the years that followed, I learned that the house was not merely a place where we slept and learned to fear the dark. It was a keeper of rooms that could exist only as long as someone believed they could exist. The attic still held the trunk, still held the envelope, and still held the unnatural quiet that comes when the world forgets to remember. I moved away as a young man briefly, and then returned with the sense that every window I looked through belonged to a life I had once lived and would yet live again. The house wore the years as a shawl. Each season the rain came, and with it the familiar, patient voice of the house, telling me I had not left, but merely stepped aside. Now I am old, perhaps too old to pretend,